welcome to the Mother Daze podcast. I am your host, Sarah Wright Olsen. Sorry, I saw your face and it made me laugh. I
thought you were laughing at Mark's packet of beans that he has up to his head because he has a headache.
Oh no, do you have a headache?
I got a headache, but I have some frozen edamame beans that are helping with that.
You know what? I have to tell you that our guest today should be able to help you with that headache. I mean, his bio is a bio of wellness. So let's see if by the time we're done with this podcast, if your headache goes away. I don't know. I feel like it might.
Sure. I think it might.
Well, you guys, you've heard some voices. We have two amazing people on our podcast today, besides Tez and I, of course.
Yeah,
and we have Mark Weber, who we all know and love a drop-in. Love a Mark Weber drop-in. Teresa's adorable husband, very thoughtful. And we also have James Duigan. Did I say that right? Is it Duigan?
Yes. I thought it was Duigan for about 4 years of our friendship. I was like, the Dugans. And then Christy was like, are you saying, I think you might be saying Duigan. And I was like, it's that, isn't it? Like the animal? Like, she's like, absolutely not. No, it's Duigan.
Oh, there's an animal called a Dugong? I didn't even know that. Is that like an Australian animal?
It's a sea.
Well, we directly descended from them.
Oh. Of course you did.
Came from the Dugans.
So
the Duigans came from the Dugans. I feel like that's like Croods 3. Like that's a Croods 3 movie, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Well, guys, today we have the pleasure of having James Duigan, a globally renowned wellness expert, author of 7 books that have been on many bestseller lists and sold millions of copies, and founder of Bodyism, a holistic wellness company. James has dedicated his career to helping people achieve not only physical well-being, but also mental and emotional balance. He's also traveled internationally to many movies, helping celebrities train them. Help me, Tez.
Star Wars.
Oh, Star Wars.
Give us some. Drop some. Go.
Drop some names. Action. Come on.
Well, it's been it was a fun career, and we worked with incredible people, I've got to say. Teresa being one of them, and Mark Webber.
Mark Webber, not the Formula One driver, but Mark Webber. Yeah. And funnily enough, they both are Mark Allen Webber.
Really?
Both of them are.
Goodness.
Yeah. Weird.
This is true.
Oh, yes. Wow. Dropping it in there. Well, we are so excited to have you today, and hopefully you can drop some of your mind-body connection and power of consciousness on us at the Mother Daze today. And thank you for joining the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's actually so nice to have in person. We so rare. I don't think we've ever done this except for Angie Bannicky was our first in person. Right. And then we've never had an in person since. James is staying with us from Byron Bay.
Lucky
where,
you guys.
All the wellness experts kind of gravitate to that part of the world. And he's staying with us. And I was saying to Mark, it's been so nice. We put the kids to bed, and we're this little team working together with the kids, and James has been doing the cutest things. What do you call it? A snack?
Exercise snack
with the kids. Can you explain what this is? Because it's really cool. And I feel like families need to incorporate this into their lives.
Well, I heard about it from a woman called Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who's a genius and definitely worth following. And it's just doing 5 or 10 minutes of exercise. It's like a little snack, because sometimes I used to think as well, you had to kind of set aside an hour and otherwise it doesn't even count kind of thing. But these snacks, the research suggests that they're amazing for you and they're fun. And so we've been going out and doing 5 or 10 minutes with the kids, and it's been beautiful, actually.
It's been so nice.
Yeah.
Well, can you tell us what's an exercise snack look like? What do you do? Because if I just want to drop that in.
Well, the one we did down there looked incredible. So we did, 10 minutes of yoga?
That's right.
With everybody.
Including Prairie.
Yeah.
Really going for it.
And then, we just sort of kept adding things to it. So we all did some squats, and then we did some push-ups, and then we went onto the trampoline and we bounced. And then we came back and did some other stuff and sort of opened it up to the committee and said, well, what should we do next? And it was amazing.
It's fun because it's interactive with the kids.
I created an exercise snack last night.
Yes.
Okay. What's that?
So I created one called Carry the Baby. So we were to go on our walk that we do in the neighborhood. And I was like, you know what? This is going to be called Carry the Baby. So you take the 25-pound kettlebell. I'm taking the 30-pound kettlebell. And we have to hold it the entire time for what would be our normal walk. Can't set it down and then walk all the way back holding this kettlebell. Doing some curls, some like...
Did you actually do that?
We did. All the way to the park. It was very maternal. It was a nice moment for Mark and I.
Oh my God.
I love that.
It's been so sweet. I love it. You know, so the kids will go to bed at nighttime and then the three of us get together downstairs by the fire. And then we just engage in full blown like esoteric chat about the universe and being, what is it? Infinite drop in the ocean?
Yeah. A finite drop in an infinite ocean of love.
That's it.
Yeah.
And we'll literally just sit and be like, discuss. And then we just talk for a long time.
Yes.
We did a meditation the other night. James like led this meditation with this guy that he loves, and we listened to this meditation. We did that. Mark had the giggles throughout it. So much so his entire shoulders and whole body, because it's Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
And he has a specific way. His voice is a specific way of doing the meditations. And at first I was like, ha, is he joking? And then James was like, no, this is actually how it goes. And then Mark just got the giggles and started freaking his whole shoulders. Everything was going. He was trying so hard not to ruin the experience for us. But then I could see that James started going. And then I was like, well, I'm now going to lose my shit. But then you said a reflection about that. Like, what was that about, like moving through those emotions that were coming up in the meditation? Was it you, Mark, that said that?
Well, no, I just ended up really, like, it was great. It made me, first of all, it's great to laugh like that. Like I haven't laughed like that in a little while. It was like the best laughter, that feeling like full body convulsing and knowing that like, okay, don't blow this. But then I ended up really appreciating like his style. It was just the way he was delivering the message and the way he was guiding, the way he enunciates the words were really funny. But then I ended up really appreciating like the way that he did it. And it was one of the best guided meditations I've done in a really long time, actually. It was really cool. One of those ones where you feel yourself really expanding into everything. And that's what he was guiding us through the meditation, kind of just to go further and further and further out. And it was really cool.
Okay, so when you guys get together, I'm always like, all right, this is Soul Brothers meeting and talking about things that I just think it redefines the idea of masculinity. I think you guys are strong, masculine men. You love working out. You talk about your supplements. You go to shopping together. You love fashion, all those things. But there is such a beautiful sensitivity about the both of you. And you just really go there and you get vulnerable. And James was like, oh, there were moments when we were talking and we were both just brought to tears, the things that we were sharing. And I want to talk about this idea of, you know, there's the hot button issue of toxic masculinity. And James, I want to hear, like, how do you define being a male, and what is can you show up for your kids? You've got a son and two daughters. How do you show up for Leo and represent what it is to be a male, to be a father in this world?
I guess I really am so grateful to be a father, and it's the most wonderful gift. And I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate my children so much. And I'm yet to take them for granted. And I'm all in with them. They're not in the way of anything else. They are just it's a beautiful way for me to experience the world and express my love is through them. And I guess I've learned a lot. I've really looked at, I've tried to educate myself as well as I can on being great parent and a great father. And they will always do what you do. Yeah. Maybe not what you say, but they'll do what you do. And you have an opportunity to be their sort of voice of support rather than their inner critic.
Yeah.
And so I'm very conscious of that. And how I regulate my emotions is how they all learn to, especially with Leo. So, and Mark and I were laughing. No one in the world can get you as angry as your children in like 1 second, 0 to 100. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to take you somewhere nice now. Should we get your shoes on? No. You would never have a friend like that.
No. Hey, Mark, and then they take the shoe and they throw it through the window. Just saying.
But to be able to regulate and remain calm and loving is something that I've really worked on. And actually, Chrissy and I had a conversation where she said, I don't think this crushed me. It crushed me when she said, I don't think you understand. You're so big compared to them and your voice is booming.
Yeah.
And it's a lot for them. And it really, I've been working for a long time, 10 years, to not react, but to respond. So I've taught myself that when my ego has a really big charge of like, I want to defend myself, I know that's time to breathe and just take a minute and see what's there for me. And that's been incredible for our relationship as well, by the way, to respond, not react. And I sat with that, and it was very painful to think that I'm a big guy in that house, and I'm funny and calm and gentle, but that's a reality that you're a big man. And that has transformed my relationship with the kids as well, to be gentle and firm and loving. And to really, it forced me to have a much deeper relationship with them, because I had to be able to communicate with them without raising my voice. And we're much closer for it. And they don't have to act out to get my attention either. So we have a really good relationship. And
you're such a beautiful role model. I think you and Mark, when you guys get together, and between you, Mark has 3 sons and you have 1 son. And this is such a beautiful representation of what it is to be male, and to be able to wear your heart on your sleeve and crack open and not be afraid to cry with each other, and not be afraid to talk about all the beautiful, incredible things that the life has to offer. And you guys go deep so fast together and have those kinds of conversations that I think it's an invitation to your sons to do the same.
I think so. Because again, they see us having these conversations and hugging each other. And someone asked me the other day, what's your take on health that maybe isn't being spoken about right now? What's the best thing you can do? And it was, for men, community. Deep, solid, loving connections with people. And if you look at blue zones where people are living to 100, they've got a strong sense of community, and grandparents are with grandchildren, and friends meet those old guys that sit and play backgammon and, in their 80s. And a lot of men are very lonely, and a lot of men don't have a really good friend or friends that are on their team. Because sometimes men just slip into this putting each other down, or that's your opinion, I'm going to find a way of dismantling that, or just these little kind of digs, and that's how they relate. And
like the banter or whatever is
but it's
surfacey.
It's so important to have people that are on your team and that are really supporting you, and that you can talk about anything with. And that's something that I'm super grateful to have with Mark. And I've got a really good group of friends, and we talk about fatherhood and being a husband and being healthy and all of those things. And so I think that's probably the most important health hack that I've come upon recently, more than any other supplement.
Wow. What do you think about that, babe?
Yeah, it's true. Community is everything. It totally is. I was just thinking, question for you guys. I don't know, maybe this is too much, but what do you think being a man is to you, babe? Like, what, you know what I mean?
I think like it depends. The way I was raised, it was like a very traditional idea of like my dad made a lot of money and my dad worked really hard and he was not involved in raising us, really. I mean, that was, my mum had that maternal instinct to nurture and look after me and do the washing and cook for me. And I don't remember my dad ever cooking for me. And then when my parents split up and I was over at my dad's house, it took until my stepmom, Karen, came over to really be like, oh, Kevin, my dad, Kevin, she needs to go to bed at this time. And these things, she has to brush her teeth and she has to do. And he was like, oh, okay. Like he would just take me out for pizza and we'd watch The Simpsons, which he called The Simpletons. And we would just watch that together. And it was really fun. So that was kind of modeled to me. And I don't know if that's different. I know you had such a beautiful relationship with your father, Sarah, like you, James, lost his dad and really went through such a period of grief. But for me, was the idea of what fatherhood was and what that's like to be a husband.
No, and I think the reason why you're hearing a lot of that, about this concept of toxic masculinity, and it was cool to hear what your thoughts are on what it is to be a guy. And I think you reflecting on your dad kind of touches on this idea that there's a stereotype that men are not in touch with their emotions. And definitely there was a time in society where if you were a guy and showed too much emotion, in particular crying, right, that would exhibit a weakness, right? And there's this idea that men in general should not convey a weakness, right? And I think what I've been experiencing over the last decade really is kind of emerging out of those old ideas and finding myself in a community of men who are leaving that kind of behind, right? That the idea of being a man and a strong man is to actually be really in touch with your emotions and to not be afraid to express those emotions and to talk about those emotions and to show those emotions, especially with your children as well, too, right? And I think, I think we can all agree, like stereotypically, there's this idea that a man, there's like a toughness, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that it feels nice that, at least in my world right now, we're emerging out of that, and that strength and toughness is actually being in touch with how you feel and being able to express how you feel, especially within a community of men, in a real honest way. Because James, what you said too earlier, I really agree with. There are a lot of men who are very alone too, right? So there's the flip side. I feel like there's an emerging movement of men who are not afraid to express the way that they feel, but also there's still, what has been for a long time, a lot of isolated men who are afraid to talk about how they feel or not really have any outlets or ways to talk about them, right, in a healthy way. So those are my thoughts there on that. I think like it's so important, especially for our kids, to see that it is okay to have big feelings, right? And it's about how you work through those feelings. And also what you said too, James, like how you respond as opposed to react.
I love that.
And also, and it is so important to be conscious that, we're bigger and my voice is louder. And when I get angry, it can be scary. you know, especially to little people, right? And to keep that in check is really important.
One thing that came up as Mark was speaking was about the feelings, because sometimes we have this saying in our house, you've got to feel it to heal it, and to it's okay to just really feel whatever's there, and that goes through, and that came from that beautiful book, The Untethered Soul, that we've been talking about for the last few days.
Yeah.
But I just love that little mantra of you've got to feel it to heal it, and there's nothing wrong with having those feelings. It's natural and human, and they don't define who you are. And so when our kids are having big feelings, we sort of say, you know, you're the sky and the feelings are the clouds and they'll pass. It's not who you are. And also when I'm feeling sad, so, you know, every now and then I'll feel like I really miss my dad, and my kids can feel that. And all of our kids can feel when you're feeling a certain way, and they're like, Daddy, are you okay? Or, you know, what's going on? And I am always honest with them. And I always say, yeah, I'm sad. I'm having some feelings and I'm thinking about my dad, and, you know, they sit with me and hold my hand, and it's a beautiful thing. But if a lot of people brush them away, so the kids say, you feel like, yeah, I'm fine. And they paint on a smile and they're like, well, I know you're not. So is being sad not okay? Like, what's going on? And I feel this, I know this. And so you're kind of teaching them to not trust their feelings and that really truthful, intuitive part of them that's real. And so we always really encourage them to trust their feeling and to be okay with how we're feeling and honest with them.
I love that too.
If they're sad as well, we're like, I get that. I know, and I see that, rather than don't be sad, it's okay, here's a thing, or distract them from the like,
if they fall over, you're okay, get up you get, you're fine, and they're like, but I'm not fine, I don't feel fine.
Or they're having issues with their friends now, you know, and it's like, that I get it. And rather than, well, don't worry about it, here, I'll buy you something, or, you know, like that's part of being human, and that's okay, and you feel it and you learn from it and you become strong from that. And so that's been amazing to be able to hold space for the kids without having to fix, change, improve them as well.
I love how you talk about the fix, change, improve. Can you dive into that a little bit more? Because I love that.
Yeah, tell us what that means.
Well, so for instance, with my oldest daughter, who's just so wonderful.
My goddaughter.
Yeah. And she's just incredible. And so, you know, if there's something up, and I'll say, hey, Charlotte, you know, and she'll go, well, this is happening. And I'll always say, do you want me to just listen, or do you want some advice? She always says, I just want you to listen. I'm like, got it. And so I sit there and listen. And it's sometimes really difficult because you want to jump in with advice. You want to fix, change, improve. You want to help her avoid some pain or whatever. But to just sit there without judgment and without commentary really allows her to feel safe to share with me. And that's been incredible for our relationship. And then at the end, sometimes she'll say, well, Daddy, maybe a little bit of advice. Like, what do you think? And again, I've had time to be responsive rather than reactive. And, you know, I'll always generally start with questions about, well, how do you feel? And what do you think? And all of those sorts of things. And, you know, teaching Charlotte about tricky people and to trust, well, how, you know, okay, someone's saying this thing, but it's making you feel this way. And to tap into that and listen, I trust those feelings. I trust you. I trust you to choose your friendships and choose how you behave because I believe in you. And that's very empowering as well. And, you know, that fix, change, improve, almost every single time that I've done that in my life has backfired. And when I just hold space and show up and participate in life as is required in the moment, it's always better. It's always worked out. And the second that I start to try and strategize and control and fix, change, improve, it tends to just spiral. So I feel like presence is the most powerful state you can be in, just being completely in the moment. And that's as well with your friends and with your children. And then, I trust myself to show up in the moment in the way that's required as well.
All of that is amazing, first of all. And I so feel that on so many levels. I had an amazing father who was very sensitive and open, and we sometimes had a hard time communicating. I think probably because we lacked the, do you want me to listen or give you advice? We probably lacked some of that. And so we communicated through writing letters. Like he would put a letter under my door and then I would read it. And so then I wouldn't be reactive and emotional. Then I would write a letter back, and put it under his door. And it might take us 3 days to figure out whatever it was that I was going through, because it was definitely me going through something. Then, by the end of that, I felt so good. I would go to bed and feel so good after reading his letter, and what I'm wondering how you stay present, because Tez and I did this amazing breath work on Sunday. And ever since then, I have felt really different, very present, very here, very open, not reactive. Little things that have come up, I've definitely been able to keep my feet on the ground and realize, oh, that's not about me. That's about someone else. I've just been more, introspective in a way and just thoughtful. And so how do you keep that? Because the life is going to throw you everything, right? Mark, you were saying you had a crazy day yesterday and there were so many things that came up and you were running late different places and, that stuff makes you not present. It makes you feel insane. It gives you a headache where you have to put edamame on your head the next day.
Yeah.
How do you find your way back to that?
And then sometimes the rescue dog might piss on the favorite rug in the house. Sometimes that also happens.
No. Tez, that's definitely your fault.
We need to readopt that dog out. And I'm sometimes that also happens.
Help us. How do we find our way?
We have these human moments where you do lose it or you lose presence or whatever. But I love that feeling of being present so much. And I know the alternatives so well and that it's not worth it. And then there's certain things I do as a human animal to help me stay present as a spiritual kind of entity. And that's doing jiu-jitsu. And I love that. Or some kind of exercise, going for a walk with Mark, whatever it is. The dog, for instance, the dog went for a walk and he's a different person.
I know. It just needed a walk.
Yeah. And so sometimes it's nothing too complicated. You need to just go and do some exercise. And so I do that as a discipline every day. And it's really something that I love and cherish. And I also just know the alternative. And, we've been talking about the magic of life and really leaning into that. And that's when I'm at my most happy. And that's when the most wonderful things have happened and lessons have come to me, when I've really let go of control and have lent into the magic. And then sometimes I'm this is stupid. And I better get back to, I'm going to get back on the wheel. And I always think of when my ego thinks it's got to get in and manage stuff. I always think of it, those steering wheels that your parents used to put on the back seat of the car? It was on the front seat and you could pretend to drive.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I kind of feel like that's what my ego is doing. It's you're not really in control, but it feels like you are. So you feel a bit better about it. But actually, I don't know, there's a wiser part of me that's kind of,
the beauty in the let go.
Yeah. And that's amazing. We were talking about manifesting as well.
Yes.
And it's if my dreams had come true when I was 16, I'd be managing Harris scarves and married.
Which is like
I was like, what is that?
What would it be, Mark? What's the equivalent?
The local Walgreens.
Like the Target, the Walgreens or something. Which is also fine and great if that's your dream, by the way.
It's great, but I guess what I'm saying is I sometimes focus on, I want this to happen and all of that, and it's like, cool, the universe or God or bigger me says, okay, we can work on that, or you could have this thing beyond your wildest dreams.
Yeah.
You know, that there's so much more than you could ever possibly dream of, like how things are now. I mean, as growing up, I'd never heard of Byron Bay. I never knew a person like Chrissy existed. My wife, who's strong and wise and beautiful and kind and is beyond my wildest dreams. And so to be able to even just sometimes just surrender to that magic and that wisdom is really when, the most wonderful things happen for me. And I think it takes a bit of courage to do that and just to allow your ego to just rest for a bit.
Yeah. I can be a micromanager. James and I were talking about this, where like you have the thing, you're like, oh, this is all the steps I got to take to get the thing because I'm manifesting the thing. And, you know, Sarah and I have been talking about this a lot. And I was like, oh, wow, I actually needed the lesson of the let go. James, you often speak about sort of the connection between the body and mind. I want you to sort of define, if you can, consciousness and why is it so crucial to your overall wellness?
I think, I heard this amazing thing where there's a lot of people will say you have to kill your ego.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question is, what do you do with the killer? And so I think to accept your ego and just to have that strength and courage to not allow your ego to be driving things is a really important, it's an important lesson. It's an important discipline. I think it's pretty clear now that there's not even a connection between your body and your mind and your emotions. It's all the same thing. And that's now spoken about, you know, widely and that's something that I think has helped a lot of people to understand, okay, so this is all the same stuff. And I think for me, it goes wider where, again, when I'm at my happiest, wisest, and most powerful is when I feel connected to everything.
Yeah.
And I no longer see separation between this tiny drop and your tiny drop and Mark. And I'm realizing we're not just connected, we're the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got this opportunity in this life to express whatever it is I feel to express through this tiny little body. And that's very liberating because I get to show up as who I choose to be. And it's so liberating and wonderful. And I get to choose the stories I tell myself as well. And that's a thing that we really talk about with our children. So if your kids say, oh, I'm shy, or I'm not good at that, or I'm dumb, that's just the story. And we always say, well, that's interesting. And I'd love to know more about that. And I would wonder if we can tell a better story, a different story, because whatever it is, there's no shy bone or shy gene.
Mm-hmm.
That's the story that gets repeated over the years that you can keep telling.
Yes.
Or you can tell a different story. I'm confident, I'm kind, I'm empathetic. And that's been very powerful for clients over the years for me to say, you know, they'll say, oh, this is just how it is. I'm like, okay, well, how's that working out for you? It's terrible. Okay, well, let me know when you're ready to change that narrative, to change that story. And we'll just start telling a different story. And you start being kind to yourself and your actions will start changing and your energy will change. And then your whole life will change.
And then you're attracting other things, other experiences.
Yeah.
You told this really beautiful story the other night. We were all sitting around and we were talking about all things magic and witchy and manifesting and, you know, spirits, all of our stuff, all of our Laura Lynn Jackson, like the
Love
signs
that.
from animals. And actually, James told this story about how he had made up a story about himself when he was 8 years old. And I don't know if you want to share that story and what you did with that story and how you changed it. And I saw it because I said to him, we were having this conversation with another person who doesn't see totally eye to eye with the three of us about consciousness and mindfulness and intuition and spirit and, you know, the other side. And I was listening to James engage, and the story that he made up about himself when he was younger about, you know, being dumb because of this experience that happened to him when he was a little kid. He was so eloquent and so, to me, so intellectual and had such beautiful things to say about the idea that life it's immeasurable. You can't observe everything. It defies logic. And I was like, oh my God, I wish I could go back to that little James Duigan 8-year-old and be like, look at you, look at you in this conversation and look at you shine. And it was so beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, well, that's the thing. We generally have told ourselves a story at some point between 6 and 8 kind of thing. And so I was in front of the class and I didn't know fractions and I barely went to school. So I was there, and anyway, the whole class started laughing at me. So in that moment, I told myself I was dumb and I had to read and learn how to speak so that no one would find that out. And it was exhausting to have to always be right about everything and seem smart so no one would know the truth that I'm really dumb. And it kind of, I realized I was, you know, doing a lot of courses and work and self-development stuff. And they said, what story have you been telling yourself since then? I'm like, oh my God, I've been telling myself I'm dumb for decades and it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. And now there's often a choice. You can either be right or happy. And I choose being happy every single time. And I no longer need to be right. And that has been so wonderful and liberating to not have to be right about everything or anything. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh man, it's amazing. And I feel like there's so many brilliant, intelligent people. But the human intellect is so limited, and there's what we know, and then there's what we don't know. And then there's what we don't even know we don't know. It's beyond intellect, and it's something that you can feel and experience, and that's wonderful. And I love being around people that are open-hearted and open-minded. And Mark and I on our first day here, we just went to 3 different Air Ones.
That sounds expensive.
Window shopping, a lot of shoplifting. Yeah, we both wore big puffer jackets and shoplifted. No, we didn't do that. But we had so much fun and did nothing. But we just exchanged ideas and just built energy. And I just felt like we were little beacons of energy. And then we got home and we had a great chat, and everyone was just supporting and having space for every idea. And it was really beautiful.
It's that yes and thing we talk about all the time. Like, and the 3 of us were saying, Mark, James and I, when we were chatting one of the nights we've been chatting, and we were like, it's like someone has an idea and you're like, yes, and then you build on it and then you keep building on it. And it's just this like cacophony of all these like amazing high vibrational things where you're all just rooting for each other. Yes. You all want the best for one another. And Sarah and I really relate to that because her and I are in the same industry. We often will go out for the same roles, and all I want is the very best of things in life for Sarah, and all she wants for me is the same. And, you know, we were talking, Mark, James and I were talking about the idea of jealousy and like where that comes from, and planting the seeds of jealousy and all of that. And I have to say, it's so much the personal development work that I've been doing, the spiritual work that I've been doing. It's so rare that feeling will start to ignite in me. Whereas I remember when I was a lot younger, it was every second day I'd be in a state of comparison. And it's the evolution is so interesting, but it's who you surround yourself with, what sorts of conversations you're having with your community. And Mark, I wanted to ask you, what are some of your reflections? And you've been spending a lot of time with James, and you guys have gotten so close recently. You're already close, but you guys are just, every time you see each other, you just up level and up level. I want to hear about like some of the ideas and the things, the downloads that have come through just in your conversations with James.
We're talking a lot about them right now. The biggest thing that's really cool is this idea of being infinite, and this expansiveness. And this really playing with this concept of no separation is a really fun kind of mental exercise to do. It affects everything, if you can really bend and shift your head into the idea that there is no separation between you and I or anyone. That drastically impacts the concept of having a problem or an issue to solve, right? Or conflict. And so that's really cool, to kind of test out some of these really big, esoteric, lofty ideas that are actually really simple, but are challenging sometimes to put into practice when you have tasks to accomplish, or a perceived problem or conflict to work through with somebody. And so it's been really fun to have a friend where we don't even really need to put anything into practice. We don't need to put that into practice. It's just a state of being. And there's like, oh, wow, that's true. It's true. It's real. And so when you're talking in that kind of expansive headspace about politics or parenting or health, it affects that conversation in a really interesting way. And so that's the biggest thing that I've been getting out of, me and James hanging out these last few days, because we talk about all those things: health, wellness, politics, being a man, strength, love, relationships, but from this place of an infinite place. And it's really cool, because I think like so much of these big spiritual knowings and things that we can come to understand right now, they get challenged really quickly because there's always a bit of like a paradox that we're in, society kind of traps us into certain ways of being that really tests these big things, right? Like if we all realized that we were infinite beings, there's actually no separation between us energetically whatsoever, well, then there would never be a war, right? Or would there, right? And so because there is right now, there's wars, there's conflict happening, but also we are infinite and there is no separation. And so it's really interesting just kind of having these very deep conversations, and they kind of peel back layer by layer so much. And they help me because the latest kind of thing that I've been in, talking about presence, the challenge that I've been doing myself is I'm like presently really in my head, and there's like a little, right? It's like, be present and be present. Well, I am, and I'm presently really in my head.
What does that look like?
Like it's right now, it's like, I love listening and talking about all the things that we're talking about. And they send me down all these little avenues. And it's interesting, you guys. I think I have such a desire to really want to go so deep, so fast, almost with everyone, you know? I think a lot of my experience with every human being that I come into contact with nowadays, there's almost like two worlds that exist. There's like this big, scary fear, place of lack narrative that the world is spinning out there at all times. War, destruction, suffering. And then there is this just simple human thing that exists where people are like, oh, I'm here right now. And like, actually everything is okay, you know? And it's great to have a friend around who can go so deep, so fast. Because I think the thing of when you're presently really in your head, what can happen is if you get too heady and don't have a way to express and kind of run through these things that you're just feeling in your head, you can feel like you're spinning a bit, right? Or you can seem really distracted with the people around you, right? Like your relationships and with your kids and with life and work and stuff.
I love all of this. And then, okay, I have two more things I know I definitely want to ask. But so James mentioned this book, The Untethered Soul, and I was like talking to him about something recently. And he said like one of the takeaways that he had from that book was like the not needing to discuss everything when you feel like there's like conflict. And I'm you know, the Myers-Briggs test, ENFJ. I'm an ENFJ, right? And you have to answer all these questions. And one of the questions, I always laugh about it because it's so me. One of the questions is like, the more you speak with others, the better you feel. I was like, oh, that's me. I just need to talk about problems and say it. And then I'm like, oh, I feel better. And there are the people who say, no, I don't actually have to talk all of these things out. Can you just touch on that for a minute? Because that's been helpful to me recently.
Yeah. Well, again, the book is amazing. And I really practice that where most of what you think you have to deal with, really most of it just doesn't need to be dealt with. Like I have to go and speak my truth to that person. But actually, if you sit with it, feel what's there to be felt, learn what's there to be learned. And then it's like, actually, I don't need to say anything. It's cool. And so I've really been practicing that over the last few years, and life has been so much better. And with no conflict and not having to like, hey, I just need to say, you know, I wasn't okay with, because actually it doesn't matter. Most of it, 99% of it. And of course, some of it does. If it's illegal or abusive or whatever, then that's 100% different.
Yeah.
But the stuff that's annoying or no, I don't agree with that point of view. I have to tell them who to vote for and why. Or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like 99% of that stuff doesn't need to be said or dealt with. And I love that way of living. And I thought about it. I kind of extrapolated out to the minute that I die. And if I look back and I've had a really happy time with great connection with people and not getting worried about stuff, even if I'm wrong, I don't care. Like, I don't think anyone's going to come and go, you know what? You should have said something about that time they were late. You know what I mean? It was important that you said you were really pissed off. I'm just so happy to live that kind of life of acceptance. And I love living a life of appreciation rather than expectation, and just floating through being a kind dad and husband and friend. Even if I'm wrong, I don't care. because it just really works for me. It's beautiful. And there's issues. I just trust myself to show up and participate in the moment. I really do. And I heard this great story, which may not be true, but I love it anyway. And it was about buffaloes.
Okay.
And buffaloes don't like being in storms and getting rained on. And so what they've learned to do is run towards the storm, because they've learned that if they run towards it and run through it, the storm's coming this way, they go that way, and the storm passes faster by facing.
Oh my God.
But if they run away from it, the storm catches up with them and they're in it for much longer.
Oh.
So I loved that. And I thought, yes,
I'll be the buffalo.
I'm going to be the buffalo because I want to face these things. And if we've got time, I'd love to talk about, because I think it's a beautiful thing for people to know. Chrissy and I went to a relationship coach.
Yes, I want to hear this.
And it was amazing. And I was at first reluctant, because I was like, well, why? Because everything's great and it's cool. And by the way, I'm so smart, I can figure it all out myself anyway, kind of thing. So my ego was like, hang on.
I don't need someone to tell me what to do.
Hang on a minute. What can anyone know that I don't already know? But the way that I started to think, and I was like, well, hang on. The number one tennis player in the world, Novak Djokovic, has a tennis coach. And the number one boxer in the world has a boxing coach, and so on and so forth. You get it. Every great everybody has a coach when it really is important, when it means something to them. Why on earth wouldn't you have a relationship coach for what is the most important relationship in your life?
That's right.
And then I thought, okay, when do you install your fire sprinklers in your house? You put them in
as they're
getting built. Not when your house is on fire. So there's a fire in the kitchen, and me and Mark are running around in our tight denim shorts saying, oh my gosh, install the fire sprinklers kind of thing. It's too late then. And so, and me and Chrissy, we went and we worked with this relationship coach, and it was the most beautiful thing, and something great got even better. And there was still things in mine and Chrissy's relationship that were just lumps under the rug that I always thought would just stay under the rug.
Yes.
Sweep them under the rug and we can live with them.
Yeah.
It's not so bad. But Chrissy, being just as incredible as she is, she said, oh, well, let's talk about this. And I was like, let's not. Everything's cool. So let's not talk about that.
We don't even need to. What are you talking about?
It's fine.
Yeah.
The rug's fine. The lump's okay. Don't worry about it. But we did. And we just learned to see each other even more fully and beautifully. And we learned that we could have really difficult, challenging conversations and still love each other.
That is amazing.
And so I encourage really everyone to find a great coach or something like that. And while things are good, if they are, or at any point, just go and find that space where you can communicate with each other beautifully. It was so wonderful.
I love that.
I love that
so
advice.
Much. I did want to quickly ask you, because I know that Eric loves this too, is the ice baths and the sauna. And you are an expert wellness guru guy who's worked with so many celebrities for the last 20 years. I want to hear, like, what are your go-to things right now that people can start doing to improve their health?
Well, I heard something the other day, or a while ago now, it's 2 years ago now, that comfort is killing us. So to be hot and to be cold is really good for you. And having ice baths regularly doesn't have to become your personality. It's something you can do and not talk about. But I got asked about it, so I will. And I have to say it's been transformative for me. To do difficult things is really important for people. And it's something now that I really cherish. And I'm now, without a doubt, in the best shape of my life.
It's true.
And it's in large part.
It's about to be 50.
I'm about to be 50. But being barefoot on the earth having the ice bath, doing the sauna has just been so amazing. And look, there's a lot of science to back up all of these things and why to do them. And there's people that disagree. I just know how it makes me feel. It's been amazing. And as that's happened, I feel like, you know, my vibrations raised and I'm learning more. And now Mark and I, we use toothpaste without fluoride in it. We floss every day with activated charcoal dental floss. And I'm just stripping a lot of this stuff away that wasn't serving me. Mm-hmm. And I feel amazing. The body feels good, and it's just less space for everything else to just be optimized and happy. And now it's kind of getting to the point where I'm even looking at the things that I watch and listen to. I'm like, oh, that just makes me feel sad or stressed, or I don't know, watch people fight, or like, I don't
true crime podcasts. Like, who would even listen to those? Like, why would you do something like that? Right? It's just make you feel awful.
Yeah. So, you know, I watch things that make me feel good, and those kinds of things that I just think, you know, they're great. And like recently, I spent a whole year doing jiu-jitsu competitions, fighting in jiu-jitsu competitions, and then,
which is why he's here.
Yeah. And last week I fought at the World Championships, and I was genuinely.
And he got his black belt, everyone.
I did, from Roger Gracie. Thank you.
Wow.
Roger. Yeah. So no, but it was amazing. But it was really challenging, and I feel better and stronger for it. And I love that it's an example to my children that you can go and live your dreams and do these things. And also the result doesn't matter. So if I didn't win a competition, and I won a lot, but if I ever came second or third, I would always say to the guys on the podium, do you mind if I'm just going to put my arms up in celebration? Because I want to be able to show my children that I'm still really happy because I did my best.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, cool. So I was never disrespectful, but I put my hands up with a big smile. And they'd say, oh, you know, you didn't win. How do you feel? I'm like, I did my best. I'm so proud of myself. And so that's a wonderful example to the kids to just be fearless and brave to give it a go.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking to Bodhi earlier. I'm like, man, you know, real courage is being okay with not being good at something at the start, but knowing that you'll work hard and trusting yourself and you'll get good eventually, and just giving it a go.
We were talking about surf school, Sarah. You know how he's been like, I don't know, but I want to do it, but I don't. And then James was like, well, you know, it was really beautiful. Oh,
yeah.
So cool. Gosh. Well, thank you so much. It's amazing to have two very thoughtful guys on the show. And Mark, you asked earlier to Teresa about like her, you know, idea of a guy or a man and all of that. And I was thinking about that as she was answering, and just like, I think it's really different where you're from, or, you know, who you're surrounding yourself with. And, you know, if anything, like, there might be people who listen to the show and go, oh yeah, I find a commonality in that, or, you know, that feels like the people I'm surrounding myself with. But then there might be people who are like, I've never heard this stuff before. And that's also okay. And it's really cool to, you know, the first time I heard somebody talk about their spirituality and opening themselves up to the universe, that I was like, whoa, I didn't know that was something that I could do, but wow, how different I feel like just listening to this story and how I can try to apply that to my life. So I think it's so awesome to have you two on to talk about this stuff. And thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah.
You asked me that, babe. And I think that was my idea of what a man was. It was my idea. But now my idea is what's represented to me and what I know the very best, which is, you know, my man, Mark, and James, and my other best male friends who are living by example and leading this way. And it's gorgeous. It's just beautiful stuff.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Aw. Mark, thanks for coming on again. Come on anytime. James, thanks for being here. Can't wait to read all 7 of your books and whatever other ones are coming out.
7. Whoa. What's the next one? What's lucky number 8? And 8,
lucky number 8
on the side, it's infinity.
That's
so
true.
What is your 8th book going to be? Oh, yeah. All right.
Well, guys, thank you so much. You've been been listening to the Mother Daze podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And feel free to share about our show. Follow,
give us a rating, even.
Yeah, give us a rating. Give us a little comment.
Awesome. Yeah, God, that would be great.
We love you, daisies.
Love you.
Love you, daisies.
Love you, daisies.
Bye.